Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is awesome. A new podcast from Karen Hunter.
And on Sunday night, among 5 activists and public servants that were posthumously granted clemency, one of them was the great civil rights leader Marcus Garvey, who mobilized black nationalists, a whole movement that to this day, there's still remnants in so many places. He was convicted of mail fraud in 1923. Biden commuted the sentence of Marcus Garvey. This is something that Julius Garvey has spent a great portion of his life fighting to clear his dad's name. His sentence was commuted by President Calvin Coolidge in 1927 because it was trumped up. They deported Marcus Garvey. He created a Black Star Line, the first Black-owned shipping line. When you want to talk about power institutions, he was talking about international travel and bringing food and resources around the globe to Black nations. He founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, celebrated Black culture and history, gave spark, as I said, to the Nation of Islam, and also Malcolm X, whose parents were part of the Garvey movement as well. He was deported back to Jamaica. He died in London in 1940, and his son has been fighting to clear his name ever since. Let me welcome to the show. Joe Christian Gill is here, but let me welcome Dr. Julius Garvey. Hey.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to be in community with you. We have been dancing this dance for longer than I care to admit, and I just want
all the support that you've given me.
It is easy. You don't have to thank me for doing what we all should have been doing, raising our voice. And I'm glad that it penetrated the Biden administration to happen. Where were you when you heard, and is this a relief?
Yes, it's a relief. I'm on vacation in Jamaica. And when I heard, I was on my way to Jamaica. So I'm here enjoying the afterglow, shall we say. It's an event that we've been trying to get, first with President Obama back in 2016, and he didn't attend to it. So we've been pushing, President Biden, and he did it, on his last day, sort of down to the wire, when we're almost giving up hope, so to speak. So, it's very positive, and we're very happy, and we're enjoying the afterglow, as I said, of the occasion itself.
It's interesting. You would think the first Black president would have done this easily, but he didn't, right?
So, but that's his own reason. I don't know what they are, but we're very thankful that President Biden was able to do that. But this is a posthumous pardon. It's not an exoneration. We'll continue to fight for the exoneration in Congress and also to annul the conviction in the New York court system. So the struggle continues, so to speak, to completely clear his name.
So what does this do? And what would an exoneration do versus this pardon?
Well, a pardon implies that there was, something done that requires a pardon. I mean, the wording of the posthumous pardon by President Biden, is very positive because he said that it's righting an injustice, and he tagged it along to the Calvin Coolidge commutation of the sentence, back in 1927. So, he's showing that the presidents are aware of the injustice then and now. So that's very positive in stating that he's trying to correct an injustice. So we appreciate that. Plus the fact that he quoted Martin Luther King in the statement, saying that, Martin Luther King understood that he stood on the shoulders of Marcus Garvey in terms of Marcus Garvey having the first, major, civil rights movement within the United States. So those are positive statements. So it goes a long way in terms of clarification of the value of Marcus Garvey in the civil rights struggle in America, as well as the human rights struggle around the globe.
How do you combat the folks who, because, growing up, I knew about Marcus Garvey and I understood about him, but there was always this caveat that there was like something, like there was a militancy or something that was negative about him. And as an adult, I've read that that's not actually true. How do you combat that constant negativity that still even Black people in some instances still hold about your father?
Yeah, it's difficult, because as you know, the propaganda system is enormous. They've put out, documentaries, etc., trying to denigrate Marcus Garvey, as well as the criminalization, process in terms of the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover. So they've used, all of the media and tried to downgrade his character in that sense and his ability to be a leader when he led the largest member-based mass movement of any, Black or Black people worldwide, certainly in the diaspora and probably also in continental Africa. So it's not inconsequential. But this is what the system does. It criminalizes you or tries to denigrate you, tries to make a fool of you. It's like it's saying you're encapsulating the Garvey movement by calling it a Back to Africa movement. It was not a Back to Africa movement. It was a civil rights movement in the United States, and it was an anti-colonial movement around the rest of the world. It gave birth to the nations of the Caribbean and the 55 nations in Africa. People such as Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Nelson Mandela.
Patrice Lumumba. Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. All of these people are adopted and
Dr. Garvey, your line is your line's a little shaky. Your line's a little shaky.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Julius Garvey is here, Joel Christian Gill, and even talking about that, I'm spending time on the blueprint, right? Your dad had a vision of a shipping company and a vision of moving people about and resources about this globe of ours that would support and help Black people wherever we are. How does that resonate today as we sit in the wake of this administration? What's the message or the lessons that we can take from your dad's movement that can help us not just survive but thrive in this time?
Well, it's fundamental in terms of our own authenticity as a people. We've been disconnected from ourselves and from our culture. And as Marcus Garvey said, we have to liberate our minds from mental slavery. That's where the real battle is. We have to understand our history and our culture so that we can be reliant on ourselves, meaning self-reliant and self-development. And we're a sovereign people. In the United States, we need to be able to identify ourselves as sovereign people with a culture. We don't have to have the same culture as everybody else in the country. As a matter of fact, everybody, rests on their own culture. The Chinese in America have the Chinese culture. The Jews in America have Jewish culture. The Koreans in America have Korean culture. But a lot of Africans in America want to emulate the culture of, quotes, white America. That's not our culture. That would lead us to destruction. So we have to stand on our history. What Karenga, has given us Kwanzaa as a holiday with those principles, those 7 principles. Those are all coming out of, the cultural nationalism of the 60s. That's, again, based on the Garvey movement and that understanding of, we gave the world not only our humanity, but the first civilizations and the most important civilizations from the perspective of taking care of the human being being at the center, with God and nature being at the periphery and supporting the human being in terms of our developmental process and our enjoyment of life itself. So this is, I would say, Garvey now, when it was 101, if you will, 100 years ago, we need to apply Garvey 201 in all the lessons that we've learned since that time of how people are oppressed, because as I mentioned, what happened to Malcolm, he was assassinated. What happened to Martin Luther King? He was assassinated. What happened to the Panthers? We have to see that there's a trend. The same thing has happened around the world with so many people, Kwame Nkrumah, the coups, the regime changes, what's Gaddafi in Libya. You can go on and on. All of these things have happened around the world to suppress African people, disconnect them from their dignity and their resources. So the work continues, but the foundation has been laid by Marcus Garvey.
Are there any, I'm wondering if, because there was such a mass media smear campaign and some of those institutions still exist, is there anything you can do, like retroactively to because like the money never disappeared. They still have their money. They had the money then, they have the money now. Is there anything that can be done now in hindsight to go after these people that spent this time on the smear campaign?
No, that's not important. We have to tell our own story. That's the most important thing. And we have to stand on our own 2 feet. We have to build our own communities. That's one of the problems that we've had over time, believing that somehow integration is going to solve our problem. Integration is not going to solve our problem. We have to have our independent communities to rear our children. I mean, if we're going to schools and we're being taught the same attitude, the same ethics and the same morals as the people that oppressed us, we're never going to liberate our minds from mental slavery. I mean, Carter G. Woodson told us that in the 1930s about the miseducation of the Negro. And that continues because, with the integration process, we lost our Black schools, we lost our Black teachers, we had to be bus crossed down, so that we can sit in the same classrooms with people who despised us and be taught by white teachers who were preaching, white supremacist propaganda to our children. So they developed an inferiority complex, and they're continuing to fight that as they grow older. So they have to re-educate themselves. Well, we need an educational process for our children, teach them the dignity of their humanity, from birth onwards. And these are things that are important in terms of the Garvey message. It's taking control of ourselves, taking control of our communities, taking control of our story, and building on that. And of course, the entrepreneurship aspect of it, social entrepreneurship, that's an innovation of Marcus Garvey, building on Booker T. Washington. We need the entrepreneurs in the Black community to give back to the Black community and not walk away from the communities. So there's a lot to be done, but we have to be conscious of what needs to be done and then have the perseverance and the persistence to go forward with it.
We're talking with Dr. Julius Garvey, cardiothoracic surgeon, taught at Columbia, was chief of vascular and thoracic surgery at Wyckoff Heights Medical Center, medically trained. Dr. William Barber would say that America has a heart condition. What would you say about that from your training?
But, it's a metaphor, and I would say America has a mind and a heart condition, both, you see, because I believe that the mindset of America is shaped by so-called scientific materialism, believing that only matter is important, only what is physical is important, because it can be measured and it can be quantified. So they ignore anything that can't be measured and quantified. And of course, spirit can't be quantified, and neither can you quantify space, and forgetting the fact that, we only know about 5% of the matter that exists in the world anyway. So it's a very narrow view of our humanity and a very narrow view of nature itself. And scientific materialism, tends to destroy nature, and very often simply because you can't patent nature, therefore you can't make a profit from nature. So there's always the attempt to transform what is there naturally that would be beneficial to people. So you tinker with it, you change a molecule here and a molecule there, you put a carbon atom here and a nitrogen atom there, and you patent it. But it changes the potency of what you're giving, and then you create side effects. And you can see the modern medicines, getting back to the metaphor, you can see the modern medicines, they're advertised and it's going to do this and that, it's going to cure you, and it's going to do wonderful things for you. But then they tell you the side effects. And it's like 5 minutes worth of side effects. But if you have this and if you have that, and if you have headaches, and if your toes fall off, call your doctor. So it's a little bit of a hoax in terms of understanding nature, which is what science should be about. understanding nature and trying to replicate nature, because nature has given us existence. I mean, God is nature. God created nature. God is nature. God maintains nature, and God maintains us. But scientific material takes us away from that, and believing that somehow we are superior to nature, and we can tinker with nature and make better products, instead of understanding that there's an ecosystem for everything. Every bug is important. That we have to have bugs crawling all over us. We have to understand, when we remove this bug, something else has to replace it, et cetera, et cetera. The same thing has happened to our agriculture. You need herbicides, and you need fungicides, and you need fertilizers, and on and on, and everything becomes chemicalized. So, I don't want to go on and on about that, but, our culture is very much a spiritual culture as African people. And we need to seek the balance, here in the diaspora as well as on the continent, between the spirit and the material aspect of it.
I've written down scientific materialism, because I'm going to do a deep dive into that, because that's the first. I've heard it before. I know those words mean, but I'm going to do a deep dive into that so I can understand it a little bit better.
That's dope. Well, Dr. Garvey, I'll let you go back to your sun and your sand, and we'll be talking off mic.
Thank you.
Because the work continues, and we need your wisdom to help guide us.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is Awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power, a 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is Awesome, a new podcast from Karen Hunter.